She pretended to be blind for a decade until the Vampire King found her. The Vampire King Casimir had ruled the night for 3 centuries, but lately the darkness felt different. Empty. Hollow. He stood at the highest tower of his obsidian palace, overlooking the sleeping city of Ashwick below, where humans lived their fragile lives, blissfully unaware of the creatures that walked among them. His council had been pressuring him for months about the treaty with the human government, a delicate balance that kept their existence secret and their feeding regulated. But tonight, Casimir's mind wasn't on politics. Something had been calling to him, a pull he couldn't explain, a scent on the wind that made his ancient heart stir in ways he'd long forgotten. "Your Majesty," his advisor Lord Victor approached with a bow, "the monthly blood shipment from the hospital has arrived, but there's been an irregularity." Casimir turned, his silver eyes catching the moonlight. "Speak plainly, Victor." "One of the donors has been flagged. Her blood, it's different. The doctors couldn't explain it, but it carries a trace of something they've never encountered before. Something old." For the first time in decades, Casimir felt genuine curiosity. "Where is this donor?" "She works at the Ashwick Institute for the Blind. She's been there for 10 years as a resident, not staff. Her name is Novalee Thorne." The name resonated through Casimir like a bell. Without another word, he dissolved into shadow, reforming on the wind, following the invisible thread that had been tugging at his consciousness for weeks. The institute was a modest brick building on the eastern edge of the city, surrounded by gardens that would be beautiful in daylight. Casimir materialized in the shadows of an old oak tree, his supernatural senses extending outward. Heartbeats, dozens of them. Slow, peaceful sleeping. All except one. He followed the unique rhythm, steady, calm, but with an undertone of something else. Alertness. In a second-floor window he saw her silhouette. A young woman sat by the window, her face turned toward the moon, eyes closed. But unlike the others in the building, there was no trace of the confusion that usually marked the blind. Her posture was too aware, too precise. Casimir phased through the window, silent as death itself, materializing in the corner of her small room. She didn't move, didn't acknowledge his presence, but he noticed the slightest change in her breathing. "You can sense me," he said, his voice soft but commanding. Novalee remained still, her face serene, eyes closed. "I don't know what you mean, sir. I heard the window, but I cannot see you. I'm blind, you see." Her voice was melodic, controlled. Casimir smiled, revealing the slightest hint of fangs. "You're many things, Novalee Thorne, but blind is not one of them." For the briefest moment, so quick a human would have missed it, her jaw tightened. Then she turned her face toward him, eyes still closed. "You're mistaken. I've been blind since I was 17. There are medical records. Ask anyone here." He moved closer, his footsteps silent on the wooden floor. He could hear her heart now, beating faster despite her calm exterior. Her scent filled his senses, something intoxicating, ancient, like midnight roses and forgotten magic. "Your heart betrays you," Casimir whispered, now standing directly before her. "It beats like a drum warning of danger. You know what I am." Novalee's hands trembled slightly before she clasped them together. "I know many things by sound and smell that sighted people miss. Your cologne is expensive. Your clothes whisper of fine fabric. You move without footsteps. You could be anyone." "But I'm not anyone." Casimir crouched before her, studying her face. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, sharp features, full lips, auburn hair that caught the moonlight. But it was her eyes, closed as they were, that fascinated him. "Open your eyes, Novalee." "I'm blind," she repeated, but her voice wavered. "Then you have nothing to fear. Open them." Slowly, as if against her will, her eyelids lifted. Casimir found himself staring into the most extraordinary eyes he'd seen in 300 years. They were violet, not blue or grey, but true violet, and they swirled with an inner light that pulsed like a living thing. Ancient symbols flickered in their depths, glowing softly. "Impossible," he breathed. "You're a seer." Novalee's facade crumbled. Her eyes widened and she pushed back in her chair, fear finally showing on her face. "Please, I've hurt no one, I just want to be left alone." "Seers have been extinct for 2 centuries, Casimir said, his mind racing. "They were hunted down by the witch covens, their bloodline erased. You should not exist." "And yet I do," Novalee said bitterly. And I've spent 10 years pretending to be blind so no one would look too closely at my eyes, so I could have a normal life or as close to one as I could manage. Casimir stood pacing her small room. Seers were legendary even among his kind. They could see the future, the past, the threads of fate that bound all creatures. They could see through any glamour, any illusion. And their blood was said to grant visions to any who drank it. "Who else knows what you are?" he demanded. "No one. My family was killed when I was 17. I've been alone ever since. I came here to this place where no one questions why I keep my eyes closed, why I navigate by other senses. It's expected." "The blood donation," Casimir said suddenly. "That's how I found you. Your blood was flagged as unusual." Novali's face paled. "I needed the money. They said it was anonymous, that no one would." She stopped, realization dawning. "You're not human, what are you?" Casimir considered lying, but something about those violet eyes demanded truth. "I am Casimir, king of the vampires of the Northern Territories, and you, Novali Thorn, are in grave danger." She laughed, a sound without humor. "I've been in danger my whole life." "Not like this. If others of my kind discover what you are, they will hunt you. Your blood, your visions, you would be a prize beyond measure. Captured, kept, drained slowly to preserve your gift for as long as possible." He watched her face carefully. "And it won't just be vampires. The witch covens thought they'd eliminated your kind. If they learn a seer survived, they'll finish what they started." Novali stood, moving to the window with the practiced ease of someone who had mapped every inch of their space. "Then I'll run. I've done it before." "You can't run from what's coming," Casimir said. "Your blood is already in their system. It will be analyzed. Questions will be asked. And I'm not the only one who can track a scent." She turned to him, those extraordinary eyes meeting his directly for the first time. "Then why are you here, to claim me first, to lock me away in some tower like the prize you described?" Casimir was silent for a long moment. In truth, he didn't know why he'd come. By all rights, he should claim her, protect his kingdom's interests, use her gifts to secure his power. But something about her defiance, her decade of solitude, the sadness that lingered beneath her fear, stirred something in him he thought long dead. "I'm here to offer you a choice," he said finally. "Come with me willingly, let me protect you. In exchange, you help me understand what's happening in my kingdom. There have been disturbances, visions plague some of my people, driving them mad, prophecies that make no sense. I believe it's connected to your bloodline, to Seers. And if I refuse, then I wipe your memory of this conversation and disappear. You'll have perhaps a week before others find you, maybe less." Novali studied him with those ancient eyes, and Casimir had the unsettling sensation of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in centuries. Not just his form, but his essence, his past, his intentions. "You're telling the truth," she said softly. "You genuinely don't know why you're offering me protection instead of chains." She tilted her head. "But I can see it. There's a thread connecting us, red as blood, strong as steel. Our fates are bound, Vampire King, have been since before I was born." A chill ran down Casimir's spine. "What do you see?" "Chaos," she whispered. "Fire and blood, a war that will remake the world, and at the center of it all," she closed her eyes, swaying, "we stand together or everything falls into darkness." Casimir caught her as her knees buckled, the vision clearly taking its toll. She felt impossibly light in his arms, fragile despite the power in her blood. "Novali." "I'll come with you," she said, opening her eyes to look up at him. "Not because I trust you, but because I've seen enough to know that running won't save me this time. Whatever is coming, we face it together, or we don't face it at all." Casimir nodded, helping her steady herself. "Gather what you need. We leave now before dawn." As Novali moved around her room, collecting the few possessions she owned, Casimir stepped to the window, his senses alert. Already he could feel eyes on the building. Not human eyes. Something else stirred in the shadows of Ashwick tonight. The game had begun, and the Vampire King had just claimed the most valuable piece on the board. He only hoped he could keep her alive long enough to understand why fate had brought them together. The journey to Casimir's palace was unlike anything Novali had ever experienced. One moment they were in her small room at the Institute, and the next, shadows wrapped around them like silk, and the world dissolved into darkness. When light returned, she stood in a throne room that took her breath away. Obsidian pillars reached toward a ceiling painted with stars. Not painted, she realized, but actual stars, visible through an enchanted skylight. The floor was polished marble that reflected like black water, and throughout the vast space, vampires stopped mid-conversation to stare at the newcomer. "Keep your eyes closed," Casimir murmured in her ear. "Not all here are as enlightened as I am. Let them believe you're simply blind for now." Novalie lowered her eyelids, immediately feeling safer behind the familiar veil. She could still see through her gift. The auras of the vampires glowed like cold fire, blues and greys and deep purples. Casimir's burned brightest, silver shot through with veins of red. "Your Majesty," Lord Victor approached, his footsteps echoing. "You left without guard, without notice. The council has been—" He stopped, clearly noticing Novalie. "Is this the blood donor?" "This is Novalie Thorn," Casimir said, his voice carrying authority that silenced the whispers spreading through the room. "She is under my personal protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Is that understood?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Novalie heard the rustle of clothing as vampires bowed. "Of course, Your Majesty," Victor said, though suspicion coloured his tone. "Shall I prepare quarters in the guest wing?" "No, she stays in the tower adjacent to my chambers. Post guards at every entrance. No one enters without my explicit permission." Novalie felt his hand on the small of her back, guiding her forward. She walked with the careful steps of someone truly blind, though her seer vision showed her every obstacle, every watching face, every thread of fate that crisscrossed the room like a spider's web. As they climbed the spiral staircase to the tower, Casimir remained silent. Novalie could feel tension radiating from him, different from the confidence he'd shown at the Institute. "Your court doesn't trust you," she said quietly. "My court doesn't trust anyone, it's how we've survived." He opened a door, gesturing her inside. "These will be your chambers. There's a library, a bedroom, and a balcony that overlooks the eastern gardens. The windows are spelled, sunlight filters through but won't harm any vampire who enters. You'll be safe here." Novalie opened her eyes, taking in the luxurious space. Books lined every wall, a four-poster bed sat draped in deep burgundy silk, and through open doors she saw a balcony where night-blooming flowers released their perfume into the air. "It's beautiful," she admitted, "also a prison." "A gilded cage is still a cage," Casimir agreed. "But better than the alternative. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we begin trying to understand these visions that plague my people." He turned to leave, but Novalie spoke. "Casimir, what aren't you telling me? You said disturbances, visions driving your people mad, but there's more, isn't there?" The Vampire King paused at the door, his back to her. "3 of my vampires have died in the last month. Not killed, died. Vampires don't die of natural causes, Novalie. We're immortal. But they aged centuries in moments, crumbled to dust, and with their last breaths each one spoke the same prophecy. When the blind seer sees again, the eternal night will end, and the King of Shadows will face his final dawn." Novalie's blood ran cold. "The blind seer, they meant me." "Perhaps, or perhaps it's metaphor. Either way, something is killing immortals and the signs point to your bloodline." He finally turned to face her. "I brought you here to protect you, yes, but also because you might be the only one who can tell me how to save my people." Before she could respond, a scream echoed through the palace. Then another. Casimir was gone in an instant, moving with supernatural speed. Novalie ran to the door, yanking it open against his orders, and followed the sound. The throne room had erupted into chaos. Vampires crowded around something on the floor, and Novalie pushed through, her seer sight showing her what others couldn't see, a web of dark magic, pulsing like a heartbeat, spreading through the room like poison. On the floor lay a vampire woman, her body convulsing. As Novalie watched in horror, the woman's smooth skin began to wrinkle, her lustrous hair turning grey, then white. "Get back," Casimir commanded, but it was too late. The woman's eyes, wild with terror, locked onto Novalie. "The blind seer," the dying vampire rasped. "You've brought her here, you've doomed us all. The prophecy begins, the eternal night ends, and with it our kind falls to dust and memory." The woman's final scream echoed through the chamber as her body disintegrated, leaving only ash and the faint scent of roses, the same scent that clung to Novalie's skin. The entire court turned to stare at her. Novalie felt hundreds of eyes, hostile and afraid, and knew that in bringing her here, Casimir had painted a target on both their backs. "Seize her," someone shouted. "She's brought a curse upon us." Casimir moved to stand between Novely and the advancing vampires, his power radiating outward like a physical force. "Stand down, all of you. That's a command from your king." But Lord Victor stepped forward, his face twisted with anger and fear. "With respect, your majesty, your judgment may be compromised. The girl is clearly connected to these deaths. We should contain her, study her blood, understand." "You will not touch her," Casimir said, his voice deadly quiet. "Then you choose her over your own people," Victor challenged. "You risk us all for a human girl with strange eyes." Novely felt the tension building, saw the threads of fate converging on this moment. She could see what would happen next: violence, bloodshed, a civil war that would tear the vampire kingdom apart, unless she acted. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Casimir's arm. "It's all right, let them test my blood, let them see I'm not the enemy." "Novely, they need proof and I need answers too." She turned to face the court, opening her eyes fully for the first time. Gasps echoed as they saw the violet swirl, the ancient symbols that pulsed in her gaze. "I am Novely Thorn, last of the seers. For 10 years I've hidden what I am, but I didn't ask for this gift and I didn't cause these deaths. Something dark is at work here, something that wants us divided. Let me help you find it." The room fell silent. Then, from the shadows, a new voice spoke. Brave words from a descendant of those who once enslaved our kind. An old vampire emerged from the crowd, ancient beyond measure, his eyes black as void. Novely's seer sight showed her his aura, twisted, corrupted, pulsing with the same dark magic that had killed the woman. "Elder Malachi," Casimir acknowledged with a slight bow, "I didn't know you'd returned from the outer territories." "I came when I sensed the disturbance, and now I see its source." Malachi's gaze fixed on Novely. "The seers once used their visions to control us, to predict our movements, to bind us with prophecies we couldn't escape. They made us slaves to fate itself. My own maker was destroyed because of a seer's vision. That's why the covens hunted them to extinction, with our blessing." "That was 200 years ago," Novely said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I wasn't even born, I've hurt no one." "Haven't you?" Malachi moved closer and Novely saw it, the dark tendrils of magic that connected him to the ash pile, to the prophecy, to everything. "Your very existence rewrites fate. Every vision you have, every future you see creates ripples that damage the fabric of reality. The death started the moment your blood entered our system. You're a walking curse, girl. The prophecy is clear. While you live and see, the eternal night ends." Casimir tensed beside her. "You seem very knowledgeable about these prophecies, Malachi, almost as if you knew they were coming." The ancient vampire smiled, revealing yellowed fangs. "I've lived 3,000 years, boy king. I know many things you don't." Novely's seer sight flared suddenly, painfully, and she gasped as a vision slammed into her consciousness. She saw Malachi in a hidden chamber, speaking words in a dead language, blood magic circle glowing. She saw him orchestrating the deaths, manipulating the prophecy, using her arrival as a catalyst for something larger. "It's you," she breathed. "You're killing them. You're using blood magic to make the prophecy real, but that's not the real goal, is it? You want—" Malachi's hand shot out, impossibly fast, gripping her throat. "Clever little seer. Yes, let's see what you really are." Power poured from him, dark and ancient, and Novely screamed as it invaded her mind, ripping through her memories, her visions, her very soul. She felt him searching for something, hungry and desperate. Then Casimir was there, his hand crushing Malachi's wrist, forcing him to release her. "Touch her again, and king or not, I will end you." "You can't, boy," Malachi laughed. "I'm older than your bloodline, stronger, and I'm about to be much more." He raised his other hand, and the ash from the dead vampire rose, swirling into a vortex. "Each death feeds the ritual. Each prophecy fulfilled brings me closer. And when the eternal night ends, it won't be extinction for our kind, it will be evolution. The old order falls, and I rise as the new vampire god." The ash exploded outward, and chaos erupted. Vampires screamed as the dark magic touched them, some aging instantly, others falling into prophetic trances. Casimir pulled Novely against him, shielding her with his body as the room descended into madness. "The tower," he said urgently. "We have to get you out of here." But Novely gripped his shirt, her eyes blazing violet. No, running won't stop this. I've seen it, Casimir. The only way to break his ritual is to face the prophecy head-on. The eternal night ends, but not the way he thinks, not the way any of us think. What does that mean? She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw centuries of futures branching and converging. It means you have to trust me, completely. Can you do that? Casimir stared at her, this woman who'd been hiding in plain sight for a decade, who held the fate of his entire species in her strange violet eyes. Every instinct screamed at him to take her and run, to protect her at all costs. But he'd lived 3 centuries by trusting his instincts. Perhaps it was time to trust something else. Tell me what to do, he said. Novely smiled, fierce and fearless. Take me to wherever he's conducting the ritual. And then, Vampire King, you're going to have to let me die. The catacombs beneath Casimir's palace were older than the structure above, carved from bedrock by ancient hands for purposes long forgotten. Now, as Casimir led Novely through passages that grew progressively darker and more oppressive, he questioned every decision that had brought them to this moment. I'm not letting you die, he said for the 3rd time. You don't have a choice, Novely replied, her hand steady in his despite the tremor he could hear in her voice. I've seen it, Casimir. Every version of this night, every possible future. The only path that doesn't end in extinction for your kind requires my death. Malachi's ritual feeds on the prophecy. When the blind seer sees again, the eternal night will end. He's orchestrated everything to fulfill it on his terms. Then we change the terms. You can't change prophecy. That's not how it works. She stopped, forcing him to turn and face her. In the dim light of the torches, her violet eyes seemed to glow from within. But we can change what it means. The eternal night, he thinks it refers to your immortality, your dominion over darkness. But I've seen deeper. The eternal night is the curse that binds your kind to bloodlust, to darkness, to living as predators. When it ends, it doesn't mean your extinction. It means your evolution. Your freedom. Casimir shook his head. That's insane. Our nature is what we are. You can't separate a vampire from the thirst. Can't I? She reached up, touching his face gently. When you found me, you could have taken me by force, drained me, enslaved me, used my gifts for your own power. But you didn't. Why? He had no answer. Or rather, he had answers he wasn't ready to speak aloud, that something in her scent, her spirit, her defiant courage had awakened feelings he'd buried centuries ago. That for the first time since his own turning, he'd felt something beyond hunger, beyond the cold calculation of immortal politics. He'd felt human. The ritual chamber is ahead, Novely said, releasing him and moving forward. Whatever happens, don't interfere until the moment I tell you. Promise me. Novely. Promise me, Casimir. Your entire kingdom depends on it. Reluctantly, he nodded. I promise. The passage opened into a vast chamber, and what Casimir saw made his ancient blood run cold. The room was a perfect circle, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. At the center stood Malachi, surrounded by a complex web of blood magic circles, each one pulsing with dark energy. Around the perimeter, 12 vampires stood chained, their bodies in various states of decay, the source of the deaths, Casimir realized. Malachi was draining them slowly, using their immortal essence to fuel his transformation. Ah, there you are, Malachi said, his voice echoing unnaturally. The king and his seer, right on schedule. Did you really think you were making choices, boy? Every step you've taken has been part of the prophecy. You're meeting her, bringing her here, even this defiant last stand, all foretold, all required. Casimir felt rage building, but Novely squeezed his hand once, a warning. You're right, she said, stepping forward. It was all foretold. I've been seeing this night since I was 17, since the moment my family was killed. I've spent 10 years preparing for it. Malachi laughed. Preparing for your death, how noble. Come then, blind seer, step into the circle. Let's end this eternal night and begin my reign as a god. Novely walked forward, and every instinct in Casimir screamed to stop her. But he'd promised. He forced himself to watch as she stepped into the outer circle, as dark magic rose around her like smoke. Tell me something, Malachi, Novely said calmly. In all your centuries, did you never wonder why the seers were really hunted to extinction? Did you truly believe it was just because we could predict vampire movements? The ancient vampire's eyes narrowed. What game is this? No game, just a question you should have asked. Her eyes began to glow brighter, violet light pouring from them like twin suns. The seers weren't killed because we could see the future. We were killed because we could change it, because we could see the threads of fate and choose to cut them, reweave them, make new patterns entirely. That's why we were dangerous. That's why both vampires and witches wanted us gone. She raised her hands, and the symbols carved in the floor began to glow in response, not with dark energy, but with violet light that matched her eyes. "What are you doing?" Malachi snarled, his ritual beginning to shake. "I'm blind, remember," Novali smiled. "I've been blind for 10 years. Ending will shock you. Watch full on website, link is in description. Go and watch full story."